I am 65. That night, I sat quietly in the corner of my son's living room, the one I helped him remodel 3 years ago. The celebration was for his wife's birthday, and the house had been transformed into something out of a lifestyle magazine. Soft golden light spilled from designer lamps shaped like lanterns. String lights framed the large windows, their gentle glow catching the edges of the white curtains that swayed with every breeze. The scent of spiced citrus candles drifted through the air, layered over the smell of catered food, grilled rosemary chicken, mini Capri skewers, and some kind of truffle mac and cheese served in tiny porcelain bowls. Jazz played low in the background, old, classic stuff, probably chosen by her father. The kind of music that made people feel sophisticated without really saying anything. Someone popped open another bottle of sparkling cider, and laughter followed, light and easy, like it belonged to another world entirely. I sat on the edge of the sectional, half obscured by a massive bouquet of lilies and eucalyptus on the end table. I could smell them strong and sweet, almost overpowering. Maybe that was the point. They were beautiful, expensive, impossible to ignore. Unlike me, around me, the room pulsed with celebration. Her friends had come in silk blouses and well-ironed slacks. Her parents arrived 30 minutes early, bearing a gift in a white bag with a gold ribbon and a card so thick it looked like it cost more than my groceries for the week. The moment they walked in, my son had dropped everything, greeting them with a hug, offering them drinks, ushering them to the best seats by the fireplace. I watched as he tucked a decorative pillow behind his mother-in-law's back, then handed his father-in-law the remote to the sound system like it was a sacred offering. I knew these gestures. I taught him those gestures. And yet, here I was, sitting at the edge of the room like extra furniture, present, but not invited to participate. No one really saw me, unless they needed something. Do we have more cocktail napkins? Where's the extra ice? Could you grab another bottle of white? I smiled, nodded, got up, sat down, got up again. It wasn't that I was angry. Not exactly. Not at first. But each time someone looked through me instead of at me, something inside chipped a little further away. I held the tray with the prosciutto bites while someone complimented the birthday girl's mother for raising such a poised, elegant woman. Another person chimed in, "It's no wonder your daughter turned out so well. You have such presence." There was a gentle round of laughter. I smiled again, swallowed the sharpness gathering at the back of my throat, and quietly refilled the champagne flutes. My hands were steady, but my chest felt hollow. Once, years ago, my son turned 8 in a cramped duplex where the heater rattled like an old train and the neighbors played the same country song on repeat every Friday night. I had baked him a lopsided cake and decorated the living room with paper chains we made together from colored printer paper. He had hugged me so tight that day, whispering, "You're the best, Mama." I had nothing but that moment, and it had felt like everything. But memories don't fill silence. They don't stop the room from passing you by. I moved back into the kitchen, the heels of my shoes clicking softly against the oak floors I helped install. I'd chosen those floors myself when my son and his wife bought the house, back when they still asked for my opinion on things. The kitchen was spotless, the countertops gleaming white marble, the cabinets a soft gray blue with brass handles. There was a drawer for everything, a place for everything, including me, apparently, behind the scenes. I heard her mother laughing loudly from the living room again. Something about their recent trip to Napa. Everyone leaned in, listening. My son stood nearby, nodding, eyes warm with approval. When did I become so easy to ignore? I checked the hors d'oeuvres, straightened the cheese board, adjusted the folded linen napkins, poured another pitcher of cucumber water and garnished it with mint. I'd made that cucumber water. I'd prepared the cheese board. I had been at the grocery store that morning buying the brie and smoked almonds and rosemary crackers. Not because anyone asked me to, because I thought it might help, because I wanted to be useful, because somewhere deep inside, a part of me still thought, if I keep giving, maybe they'll remember I exist. They didn't. My grandson walked past me once, eyes glued to a tablet. I smiled and reached out, brushing a curl from his forehead. He blinked, nodded, and walked away. Not cruelly, just neutrally. like I was a chair or a door. "Excuse me," said one of the guests, a woman I'd never met before. She reached over me to grab a napkin and then gave me a look like I was in her way. "Oh," I said, stepping aside. Sorry. For standing still. For existing in a space I helped build. For wanting to be included." I took a breath. The air felt heavier than it should have. In the reflection of the microwave door, I caught a glimpse of myself. Gray at the temples, lipstick slightly faded, blouse a little rumpled from the effort of staying helpful. My eyes tired, yes, but also watching. Absorbing. I turned away. Out in the hallway, framed photos lined the walls. Wedding portraits. Vacation snapshots. The kids. Not one of them included me. Not one. Once I had driven him to school every single morning for 4 years straight. We had a routine bagel, apple slices, a note in his lunch. I never missed a parent-teacher night. I worked double shifts just so he could go on the 8th grade field trip. I stayed up until 2 in the morning hemming his prom pants when the tailor got the measurements wrong. Now, I was the woman who carried trays and cleaned spills and answered questions like, "Is there more sparkling cider?" The doorbell rang. Another guest arrived. The laughter swelled again. I lingered in the hallway, listening, feeling more like an outsider than I ever had. The party kept moving without me, like a train I had missed long ago. And maybe, somewhere deep down, I had known I wasn't on board anymore, that I had been left behind long before tonight. I returned to the kitchen and quietly picked up a damp cloth to wipe the counter again, even though it was already clean. In my chest, something stirred, quiet, slow, undeniable. Not rage. Not yet, but something colder, sharper, more focused. Something that had been asleep for too long. Something waking. I didn't notice the wine glass wobble until it was too late. One moment, I was standing near the coffee table with a fresh tray of fig and brie crackers, trying to quietly place it down without interrupting the conversation happening 2 feet away. The next, a sleeve caught the corner of the tray, and a full glass of red wine tipped over. It hit the rug with a soft but awful splatter, dark liquid bleeding into cream-colored fibers like spilled ink. My breath caught in my chest. My cheeks flushed with sudden heat. I froze. Her father, Raymond, pulled back slightly in his chair, his expression shifting from amusement to mild annoyance. He gave a dry chuckle, shaking his head like someone inconvenienced at a restaurant. My daughter-in-law's eyes widened slightly, her perfectly arched brows rising. Her hand fluttered near her mouth, and she glanced at the rug, then at her mother. Their lips pressed into tight, polite smiles. The hum of conversation stuttered around us like a record skipping. A few guests turned toward the sound, their expressions tightening in surprise, then quickly smoothing into neutral interest as though they'd just heard a dish break in a restaurant. Not worth reacting to. Not their problem. I looked to my son. He didn't even glance at me. Instead, he leaned toward Raymond with a warm grin and a steady hand on his shoulder. "Don't worry, everything's fine," he said with a small laugh, as if brushing off a tiny accident. Then, without even turning toward me, he added over his shoulder, "You know where the moth is. Clean it up." His voice was calm, light, as if it were nothing. But to me, it wasn't nothing. It was everything. There was no apology in his tone, no concern, not even a flicker of acknowledgement, not even the smallest glance of empathy. Just an instruction, a dismissal. The words hit harder than if he'd yelled. I stood still, the tray heavy in my hands. Something inside me twisted tight, sharp, and cold. Around me, the party resumed. The music, soft jazz, the kind with too many saxophones, played on. The overhead lights glowed warm white from the antique glass chandeliers, catching on wine glasses and gold-accented plates. Her father chuckled again, adjusting in his seat. My daughter-in-law was already mid-conversation again, gesturing with her perfectly manicured fingers. I was invisible. No one offered to help. No one said a word. It was as though I had simply become the person who deals with spills an unnamed, unpaid cleaner. I bent down slowly, my knees stiff and aching from standing too long. I used a napkin to dab at the wine, though I knew it was useless. The rich red stain was already soaking into the wool. I could smell it sweet, sharp, earthy. She sighed behind me. My daughter-in-law. A long, airy breath that barely masked her irritation. I glanced up just enough to see her rub her temple as if this moment, my mistake, had given her a headache. Still, I said nothing. I scrubbed in silence. I thought of every moment that led to this. The first time I visited this house, it had been bare. Empty rooms, boxes stacked, dust on the windowsills. I helped unpack dishes, hung curtains, bought that very rug as a housewarming gift. I remember laying it out myself, on my knees, smoothing the corners while my son and his wife argued over whether the couch should face the fireplace or the window. And now, here I was, knees pressed against that same rug, cleaning it. The stain spread. So did the silence. My hands trembled. I forced them to stay steady. From the kitchen, I could hear laughter again. Silverware clinking against ceramic. Someone popped a champagne cork, and there was a cheer. He didn't even check to see if I needed help. My son, my only child. I finished blotting the spill, though the wine had already soaked through. I placed the tray on the buffet counter without a word. I adjusted the napkin holder, straightened a candle. Then I walked to the back door and reached for my coat. My fingers were cold, even though the room was warm. My chest felt heavy, my steps slow. The coat hung neatly on the hook, exactly where I had left it 2 hours earlier. No one asked why I was leaving. No one looked over. I stepped outside. The evening air hit my face like a wave. Cool, sharp, and honest. Unlike the air inside. No one followed. Not even him. My car sat beneath the street lamp, its surface catching the faint orange glow. I opened the door, slid into the seat, and sat there. Just sat. The engine stayed off. The radio silent. I held the steering wheel like I was waiting for something. Maybe a text. A call. A knock on the window. Nothing. They were probably cutting the cake by then. I had made that cake the night before. Lemon sponge, cream cheese frosting, her favorite. I had piped little flowers around the edges. Spent 2 hours in the kitchen after work. My hands had cramped from the decorating bag. I didn't do it for thanks. I did it because I believed it mattered. But it didn't. Not tonight. Not anymore. The drive home passed like a dream, quiet streets, flickering traffic lights, the occasional pair of headlights passing in the opposite lane. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't want noise. I wanted silence. In the stillness, memories came uninvited. Him, at 5, holding my hand at the grocery store, swinging our arms like we were flying. Him, at 12, sitting on the kitchen floor with me after his first heartbreak, eating ice cream out of the tub. Him, at 23, moving into his first apartment where I scrubbed the bathroom while he set up the Wi-Fi. And now, at 37, not even looking at me when I left his house. Not saying goodbye. The porch light at my house glowed warmly. I parked, stepped inside, and locked the door behind me. The quiet wrapped around me like a coat. My home smelled like cinnamon and old books. Familiar. Safe. I placed my purse on the side table, slipped off my shoes, stood in the entryway, unsure what to do next. What hurt wasn't just what happened. It was what it revealed. I wasn't important in that house. Not to him. Not to her. Not anymore. I walked to the kitchen, turned on the kettle. The light above the stove buzzed faintly. I stood still and watched the steam curl upward. My hands rested on the counter. I could still feel the chill of the doorknob from their house. The weight of the mop I never picked up. The silence when I left. I sipped my tea slowly. The warmth did little to ease the ache behind my ribs. I moved to the living room and settled into the old armchair by the window. My quilt, folded on the back, smelled faintly of lavender. Outside, the garden was dark. The moonlight touched the edges of the flower beds, casting soft shadows on the lawn. The wind stirred the branches gently. I thought about all the years I had spent trying to stay useful, trying to matter. I wasn't angry. Not yet. But something inside me was no longer asleep. Not rage. Not revenge. Something quieter. Firmer. A shift. A decision. Not to fight. Not to yell. But to stop. To stop waiting to be seen. To stop pretending I didn't notice. To stop giving everything without being valued. That night, I sat there until the sky turned silver blue, until the first bird sang, and I knew something had to change. And it would. Soon. That night, sleep didn't come. I lay still beneath the quilt that had warmed me through harsh winters, quiet holidays, and those first months after my husband passed. The soft cotton fabric held the scent of lavender from the sachet I kept in the linen drawer. Familiar. Comforting. But tonight, the comfort couldn't reach me. The ticking clock on the living room wall echoed louder than usual, steady and judgmental. Each second felt like it was measuring the weight of my silence. I'd given too much for too long. By 5 in the morning, I was already dressed and standing barefoot on the kitchen's cold tile floor. I had made a cup of tea, but it sat untouched. My hands were resting on the windowsill above the sink, watching the faint blush of morning rise behind a row of leafless trees. The garden was still wet from the rain, and the rosemary bush near the back fence drooped slightly under the weight of water. There was a stillness in the air, almost reverent, like the world itself was waiting. I turned from the window and walked to my desk in the corner of the living room. The carpet felt soft beneath my feet. Light from the hallway lamp spilled across the desk's surface, revealing dust on the edge and the small, ceramic bowl where I kept spare keys. I opened the bottom drawer and pulled out the manila folder labeled House Documents. My name, just mine. Every page bore my signature. The deed, the taxes, the closing papers. The house was mine legally fully. Not a gift. Not shared. Not borrowed. And yet I had given it to them. I had let them live there rent-free, told them to focus on the children, their future. I'd even helped decorate the nursery. Painted walls pale yellow while my daughter-in-law shopped for designer cribs. And now I was the one scrubbing wine out of rugs. I could have confronted them. I could have raised my voice. But instead, I made a call. At exactly 7:03 a.m., with the sky now shifting from blue to pale gray, I picked up the phone and dialed the number of the realtor I'd worked with years ago. She answered on the third ring. "Karen," I said, my voice even. "Good morning," she said cheerfully. "It's been so long. How are you?" "I need you to list a property," I said. "Oh." Her voice lowered. "Which one?" "My son's house. The one I own." Silence stretched for a moment. "I see," she finally replied. "Are you absolutely sure?" "Yes," I said. "I'm sure." I didn't need time to think. I had spent years thinking. This was action. Not revenge, but reclamation. Rain began to fall again as I hung up. A quiet, steady drizzle that dampened the sidewalks and made the leaves shine. I opened the front door and stepped onto the porch. The air smelled like wet soil and pine needles. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked once, then went quiet. I watched the rain bead and roll off the railing, a gentle rhythm that matched the calm inside me. There was no triumph, no glee, just certainty. Later that day, I received an email from Karen confirming our first showing. 2 potential buyers already scheduled. She was always fast, efficient. For the next 2 days, I moved through my routines as if on autopilot. I trimmed the rose bushes, baked a banana loaf, visited the small bookstore downtown. I greeted neighbors with a smile. No one knew what I had done, and I liked it that way. I didn't tell my son. I didn't tell anyone. Let the process unfold. Let them feel the shift before they understood it. Let the silence speak. I waited. Still no calls. No texts. No messages from him. Not even a simple, "Did you get home okay?" Nothing. It wasn't surprising, but it still ached. One evening, while organizing the hallway closet, my hand brushed the sleeve of a blue winter coat. Something inside the pocket crinkled. I reached in and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper, yellowed, soft from time. A drawing. Stick figures, a tall one with glasses, a short one with wild hair. Above them, in crooked handwriting, me and Mommy. My heart clenched. I sat down on the floor of the hallway, holding the drawing in my lap. It was from years ago, maybe first grade. The edges were worn. The ink slightly faded, but it was unmistakably him. I had forgotten I still carried this, tucked away like so many other things I had let go of too quietly. It reminded me of the day I stood outside my father's house, suitcase in hand, 18 and unwanted. He had said, "You're on your own now." I remembered the weight of that sentence. The finality. The cold shock. I had sworn never to do the same. But now I saw things differently. My father pushed me out with cruelty. I was asking my son to stand on his own because I had protected him so long. He had forgotten to see me. I refolded the drawing and placed it in a small keepsake box in my bedroom. Labeled it "Remember." And I kept going. Every day Karen brought news. Interest was high. The market was active. An investor was found quickly. He didn't even look at the house when I agreed to his price. I gave her the go-ahead. The papers would be signed by the end of the week. Notice sent within 48 hours. Still, not a word from him. That evening, I went for a walk. The sidewalks glistened with leftover rain, and puddles reflected the streetlights like melted amber. Leaves scattered in piles, damp and dark. I passed a neighbor trimming her hedges. We exchanged waves. I turned the corner and kept walking until I reached a small park where the benches faced a duck pond. I sat. The ducks were gone for the season, but the water was still. I pulled out my phone. His name stared up at me from the screen. My thumb hovered. Call him? I thought of his voice, how it used to soften when he needed help. How it used to sound when he was small and still believed I could fix anything. But this wasn't mine to fix anymore. I put the phone back in my pocket. Let him notice. Let him feel the floor shifting. That night, I lit a candle in the living room and sat beside it in silence. The flame flickered against the walls, casting soft shadows that danced above the bookshelves. I thought about what it meant to be a mother, and what it had cost me to be one without boundaries. This wasn't abandonment. This was correction. And maybe, just maybe, it was the beginning of something better. For both of us. I heard nothing for 3 days. Then, on the 4th day, it began. The first message came just after breakfast. I was sitting at the kitchen table, wrapped in my robe, my hands warm around a mug of mint tea. Outside the window, morning fog draped the hedges like a soft blanket, and dew still clung to the leaves. The house was quiet except for the ticking wall clock and the occasional creak from the old floorboards. My phone buzzed. A voicemail from my son. His voice sounded tighter than usual, forced casualness masking something unsettled. "Hey, Mom, we got something in the mail about the house. Not sure what it is. Can you call me back?" I didn't. Not because I didn't hear, but because I needed him to sit with the unknown for a moment. Just as I had sat with silence in his house, dismissed and unseen. That evening, another call. No voicemail this time. Just a missed call at 9:47 p.m., glowing faintly from the phone screen like a soft red alarm. The next morning brought 3 texts in a row. "Did you authorize this? There must be some mistake. Call me back, now." The urgency practically screamed through the screen. I placed the phone down beside my breakfast plate, beside my half-eaten toast with apricot jam. Sunlight streamed through the window in thin golden lines, illuminating the worn wood of the table. I sipped my tea. Let the steam rise. Let the silence continue. By noon, my daughter-in-law's tone joined the chorus. Her message was longer. Too polished. "We're shocked by what's happening. We've made this house a home. It's where the kids are growing up. If this is about what happened at the party, we wish you'd just talk to us. We're family." Family. That word clanged in my chest. I thought of all the nights I had rocked her children to sleep. Of the groceries I'd stocked in their fridge without being asked. Of the time I mended their torn curtains while they were out, just because I couldn't stand to see things unravel. And still, they had called me nothing more than the one who cleaned the floors. Now they wanted to talk? I didn't reply. I folded laundry. I watered the plants. The begonias on the windowsill had started to bloom again, soft coral petals, trembling slightly each time the window cracked open. The quiet in my home felt sacred. I guarded it. 3 days later, my son came in person. I saw his car pull in fast, braking too close to the curb. I was in the living room, polishing the old oak sideboard that had belonged to my mother. The sunlight hit the wood just right, showing the patterns in the grain. I set down the cloth and moved to the hallway, silent. He didn't call ahead. He just came. The knock on the door was loud. 3 firm raps. "Mom, are you home?" I didn't answer. From behind a lace curtain, I watched him shift from one foot to the other. His hands were on his hips. His jaw clenched. He called my phone. It buzzed from the table in the next room. Still, I said nothing. After nearly 15 minutes, he turned and left. The car peeled out too quickly, the sound sharp against the calm street. That night, I sat in my reading chair by the fireplace. The flames danced quietly, casting flickering shadows on the walls. In my lap was an old photograph, him at 8, laughing with icing on his nose. Back when his world had been small and simple. Back when my presence meant safety. Now he noticed me only in absence. The next day, my inbox filled. He emailed. His tone more frantic. Subject, urgent message. This is serious. We could lose the house. Please talk to me. We're drowning here. Were they drowning? Or just struggling without the support they had never acknowledged? It was never about cruelty. I didn't want them to suffer. But suffering has a way of revealing truths. The truth that I had become the invisible thread that held their world together. The truth that they never thought that thread would snap. I remembered one winter evening years ago when their heater failed. I had come over with extra blankets and a space heater. Stayed the night to help keep the children warm. They never said thank you. Not really. Just assumed I'd always be there. A week passed. Then another. The sale moved forward. Karen, ever efficient, confirmed the paperwork. Closing was scheduled. Formal notices were sent. That's when the storm broke. Phone calls every hour. Emails with subject lines like, "Why are you doing this? We're your family, and you're tearing us apart." Each message tried a new tactic: anger, guilt, disbelief. My daughter-in-law wrote, "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" What exactly had they done for me? Let me scrub their kitchen? Let me babysit during their date nights? Let me fund their mortgage in silence? I wasn't angry anymore, but I wasn't forgetting. Their comfort had always come from my effort. Their ease had been paid for with my time, my savings, my absence from my own life. Now, as the foundation shifted, they finally noticed the cracks. But not once had they said, "I'm sorry." Only, "Fix it." I wouldn't. One night, just before bed, a final message arrived from my son. I didn't realize how much I took you for granted. There it was. Not quite an apology, but something close. I read the words twice. My hand hovered above the keyboard. I could respond. Say something soft. Acknowledge the pain. Extend a branch. But then I remembered standing in their kitchen that night of the party, holding a tray, wiping a stain, being told to mop the floor. And no one even looked at me. So I didn't reply, not out of coldness, but because I needed space. Silence. Sometimes the absence of words is the only language people understand. The night air outside smelled like jasmine. I stepped onto the porch and listened to the rustle of trees. My wind chimes clinked gently like soft bells. In the distance, a dog barked once and went quiet. I leaned against the railing, breathed deeply. This wasn't vengeance. This was rebalancing. Let them feel the discomfort. Let them reckon with the shift. Maybe one day, they would truly see me, not for what I could give, but for who I was. But until then, I would not fill the silence for them. I walked back inside, turned off the lights, and let the quiet hold me like an old friend. For the first time in a long time, I felt safe inside my own boundaries. And that feeling was worth everything I had given up. The notice went out on a Tuesday. By Friday, the calls started again, this time quieter, less frantic. There was no anger left in their voices, only uncertainty. But I still didn't pick up. The house had already passed into new hands, and I had no updates to offer. That evening, while washing dishes, my phone buzzed. A new message. This one wasn't from my son, or my daughter-in-law. It was from someone I hadn't spoken to in years. Catherine, an old friend from church. She had moved states away a while back, but we used to share coffee after Sunday service, whisper during long sermons, laugh until tears rolled down our cheeks. Her message was short. "I just saw what you did. I read about it through someone at the office. I hope you're okay. I always admired your strength. You gave more than anyone ever saw. I just wanted to say I see you." I stood there, hands still wet, phone in hand. I see you. It was such a simple phrase. But in that moment, it filled the space left empty by years of being overlooked. A warmth moved through me. Not pride, not vindication, just peace. I dried my hands and sat by the kitchen window. Outside, the early autumn air had taken on a gentle chill. The last of the leaves were beginning to curl at the edges, tinged with amber and rust. I wrote back, "Thank you. That means more than I can explain." She replied a minute later, "Anytime. And if you ever want to visit, our guest room's always ready." For the first time in a long while, I felt like someone had opened a door. Not out of obligation, but out of choice. The following week, the pressure began again. Familiar tactics returned, more polished now. My daughter-in-law tagged me in a long post online, all smiles and warm filters, sharing old family pictures with a caption, "Family is everything. No matter what happens, we should never forget who held us up when we needed it." 100 likes, dozens of comments. Subtle, but deliberate. Then came the text from my son, "The kids keep asking about you. They miss you. Maybe we can talk." I stared at the screen. He hadn't brought up the party. He hadn't acknowledged what he said. Or didn't say. And I knew this wasn't reconciliation. It was control wearing a softer mask. My fingers hovered above the screen. But I didn't type. Instead, I pulled on a sweater, made a cup of tea, and walked outside. The sky was overcast, the clouds thick and low like brushed steel. The wind had picked up, and the trees danced slowly, letting go of whatever they no longer needed. That was nature's way, and now it was mine. Inside, I packed a small suitcase. Just clothes for a few days. Catherine had meant what she said, and the thought of a new view, a different kitchen, unfamiliar roads, it felt right. I left the house clean. Windows locked. Thermostat turned down. As I closed the front door, I paused and looked back. Not with regret, but with respect. That house had been the setting of many things: family dinners, birthday candles, quiet griefs. And finally, freedom. On the train ride, I watched the landscape change. City blocks faded into hills, into stretches of gold and green, into places where I wasn't known. I liked that. Catherine met me at the station. We hugged longer than expected, both of us suddenly aware of how much time had passed and how quickly it melted away. Her home was warm. The guest room smelled like eucalyptus. There was a soft throw blanket at the foot of the bed. She'd thought of everything. That night, we stayed up late, sitting at her kitchen table, drinking tea and talking. Not just about what had happened, but about everything. About aging. About motherhood. About how invisible women become the moment they stop serving, and how powerful they become the moment they stop apologizing for it. It was then that I understood something I hadn't been able to see through my anger. I had always been strong, but now I was whole. And there's a difference. Back home, my phone stayed quiet for a while. Then another message arrived. From my son, "We've moved into a rental. It's smaller, but we'll be okay. Just wanted you to know." That was it. No anger, no request, no apology, just a line in the sand. I read it twice. Then I turned off the screen and opened the window. A breeze slipped in. Soft, cool, clean. I knew we would never be what we were. But I also knew I didn't need us to be. Because this life I was stepping into was mine. Unapologetically. Entirely. I no longer needed to prove my worth through sacrifice. And I would never again confuse being needed with being loved. The next morning, Catherine slipped a note under my door before she left for work. It read, "In case no one told you this today, you did the right thing." I held that note like a lifeline. Because the truth is, there are moments when doubt creeps in. Moments when you wonder if silence is cruelty or if distance is betrayal. But then I remembered that silence was the only thing they had ever truly listened to. And distance was the only thing that finally revealed the truth. They hadn't lost me. They had released me. That afternoon, I sat under the maple tree in Catherine's yard, leaves falling all around, the scent of fresh-cut grass and cinnamon from her kitchen floating in the air. I let my shoes slip off, felt the earth beneath my feet, and I smiled, because I was alone. But for the first time, I was free. And that was enough. More than enough. If you've ever felt like you don't belong, you're not alone.